Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of HTO Football. I'm Andrew Timble, your host, alongside, obviously, Tom Whitford, my co-host. Tom, are you well?
Very well, thank you. Very well. The nights are drawing in. It's getting darker. It's looking a bit more miserable. Luckily, we've got a very cheery guest to brighten our evenings, but hopefully all the listeners' hearts as well.
I was going to say, this is a much sought-after transfer target, isn't it, at HTO Football?
Very sought after. We've been targeting this one for a while. We can't help it. Again, a little bit of Arsenal bias, but we've been targeting this one for a while.
Yeah, we do love a transfer saga, don't we, at Arsenal? So we are joined by Arsenal chief photographer, Stuart McFarlane. Stuart, you well? How's things?
All good, thank you. Thanks for asking me. It's dark winter football weather, so I'm just in my element at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. It's obviously a pleasure to have you on the show. We've been looking at you for your accounts for a while, just in admiration of your photography. So if we can sort of take it all the way back, really, Stuart, where was the first memories with you behind the camera? I mean, I teach 10-year-olds at my school, and when I ask them about their career choices, they don't tend to come up with photography. Where did it all begin for you, Stuart?
Well, when I was very young, our next door neighbour worked for Kodak. He was a technical guy, not a photographer, but he used to take portraits of all the families in the street and stuff like that. So I used to sit in his studio and watch him take pictures of my mum and my sister, but then sit in his darkroom and watch him sort of process film and print pictures. So I suppose it probably came from that, but then there was a bit of a gap. You know, I went to school, not the brightest, and then came to your sort of A levels, and it's what do you do? And if you're a bit stupid, you do art, you do woodwork, and you do photography. So those are the three subjects that I did. And then I just found I had a bit of a knack for it, and then and that's sort of where it started, really.
So was Stuart an Arsenal fan who fell into photography, or the other way around?
Well, believe it or not, my father's a Chelsea fan, quite a big Chelsea fan. But in the street I grew up in, my best friend and the sort of best footballer on the street was a guy called Jonathan Fawcett, who was a massive Arsenal fan. Every day I used to see him kicking a ball around in his Arsenal kit, so I sort of followed him around like some sort of little, I just looked up to him so much, and used to sit in his bedroom listening to they used to do the LPs of the cup finals, so I was just sitting in his bedroom listening to them with him. So I was sort of a bit torn between the two, but going to Highbury and then going to Chelsea at that time in the 70s was a massive contrast with a lot of, don't want to sort of get political, but with all the sort of National Front and the racism in football at the time, there was nothing like that at Arsenal, but at Chelsea it was quite prominent, and obviously it disappeared now, but I felt that Arsenal was where I sort of belonged, really, and not what Chelsea was about.
You say you live in this, before we were on air, you live in a stone's throw away from Highbury Stadium. What was the first photograph of Highbury that you took, Stuart? Was it as a fan as a kid growing up, or?
Not really. I don't think my mum let me out of the house with my camera. She thought I was going to leave it somewhere or lose it, or first pictures probably when I first started as a photographer, really, because back in the early days of going to football, people didn't really carry cameras around in the sort of early 80s or whatever. You were sort of looked at as being a bit of a geek, I think. So really, my first picture was probably as I came in as a photographer I worked for an agency in the late 80s. First game I did was Arsenal, Aston Villa, I think 1988. That was probably the first picture I took. But obviously got a lot of memories of the stadium and what it looked like. But, looking back now, I wish now the fantastic place is more or less gone. I wish I'd made more of an effort, but when you're young, you don't really think into the future, do you?
No, well, at least you were hired to do what you were hired to do by the agency, and therefore then the club. We had Gary and Colin Lewin on. Gary said he was the second-hand goalkeeper and a jack of all trades, and he eventually fell into physiotherapy, and now they try and pretend they're experts, which is outrageous, obviously. So at least you. But then, when did the full-time move to the club? So you're working for an agency, and how did the full-time job come up at Arsenal?
Well, it was a bit of after Arsenal won the league in '89.
Did they?
They won it up. They won it up north somewhere. But
something like that.
There's a film about it, isn't there?
Yeah. After we won the league, the they were looking for new photographers, a new agency to cover some games for them. So they came to the company I was working for. So in 1990, late 89, 90, we started shooting games for them. And then sort of more or less working on and off. It sort of felt like full time anyway, because I was covering maybe 20 games a season. But then in January 2001, when the plans were to move to a new stadium, they wanted someone in full time to document the sort of construction and stuff like that of the new stadium, you know, basically record it and own the copyright to all the images. So they approached me because I've been in around the club for a long time. And luckily I didn't have a job interview. And I think I started on the 1st of February 2001 as full time. But I remember my first full time day, I went to London Colney, and my boss at the time introduced me to Arsene Wenger, and he just said, well, no, Stuart's been full time for a long time. So he didn't even know I wasn't, he presumed I was full time because I'd been knocking about the training ground ever since he joined anyway.
Yeah.
That induction, if it was in 2020, Stuart, that would be some social media drop, wouldn't it, of a new photographer?
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder then sort of how those, photo arrivals of new signings, and clearly Arsene himself in 1996 would have gone with it in a social media world, as it were. But you know, just you were full time previous to that, just without all the benefits and a proper contract, Arsene. I presume that was your answer. Just sort of like, you know.
Well, job security. And,
yeah, absolutely.
And then my first day at Arsenal, I wore a suit and sat in an office. I hadn't worn a suit since I got my first Holy Communion, I think, something like that. So, but I remember my first day, I had my packed lunch in my suit. I sat out on the East Upper, had my packed lunch, looked out onto the pitch, nice sunny day, and watched the groundsman cut the pitch. And I thought, wow, you know what? I've made it. This is all I ever wanted, just to sit there listening to it. It was so peaceful in that stadium.
It's
all
a
you could hear was the hum of the lawnmowers. You know, it's just a moment I'll probably never forget.
Obviously a huge football club when you sort of come full time, Stuart. Was there pressure with that new start in your life, or was it sort of business as usual as the talent that you have?
I'm not sure. I don't know if there was pressure, because I was the first one who was full time, so I could sort of more or less mould what I was going to do. And my intentions were to build a historical library that maybe in sort of 50, 60 years time that people would look back at and they would say, wow, look at that picture. That was captured superbly by, you know, this photographer. Who is it? And then they'd look in and they say, oh, Stuart McFarlane. So really it was a sort of, my idea was to build up a historical library that is timeless, and then people would look back and I would be associated with Arsenal long before, you know, my pictures would be long after I've gone. So that was the intention. The only pressure I was under was really pressure I put myself under, I think, really.
What does and you know, we joked about it earlier around sort of deadline day signings, or you know, photo shoots for new players, or big launches and that kind of thing. What I'd be really interested to do, what does a BAU day look like? What does a day-to-day life of a club photographer look like? You know, whether it's midweek or, you know, even a match day, but just when it's not one of those special launch occasions. It's actually getting up and doing the day job. You know, how many photos will you take? What will that kind of be of? Is it literally a training brief, or do you like to capture something a bit behind the scenes?
It's really, it's so varied. I remember a friend of mine who's a photographer at Getty Images said to me years ago, oh my God, your job's so boring. All you do is photograph football. And I said, well, I don't only photograph football. I photograph coaches in our local community. I photograph, you know, got commercial briefs. I'm very lucky with the access I have to the players, but also I go, you know, we do a lot of stuff in the community, which is very rewarding, and you get to meet a lot of people from different aspects of society, you know. And I've met people that I'd never have met socially that I call great friends of mine through our community initiatives. So I think, you know, the job is very varied. Okay, you've got the structure of 38 Premier League games a season, and every single game is different. Every single game is challenging. The non-match days are the ones that you can't really predict. You know, we have, could be stuck in the office for 5 days a week, and it's boring filing pictures and doing admin and stuff like that. It's like any other office job, but the best times are when you're out and you're taking pictures. And really, I'll probably take pictures probably 4 days a week. I'm not out every day.
So when you're at a game, Stuart, and you've got that last minute equaliser or a winner, how hard is it to detach yourself? Because you bleed red and white, right? So as a fan first, how hard is that to kind of hold back and still do that exact precise job that you need?
It is tough. I remember when we played Spurs in the FA Cup semi-final at Wembley, Tony Adams scored the goal. I was at the other end. There was two of us there, and when he scored, I fell back off my seat and I was celebrating on the ground. All the other photographers were looking around and thinking, "What is this dickhead doing?" And then I sort of soon learned that the most important thing is for me is to get the picture, and then in a way it's a bit weird now because you sort of celebrate in your head a little bit, but you don't show emotion, and it's quite easy for me to work that way. The hardest thing for me now would be to come to a game without a camera and be a fan. I went away a few years ago to the Dallas Cup with the under 21s team and watched Arsenal Tottenham in a bar with Neil Banfield and Steve Bold, and I had to leave, go to my room at half time. I just thought they were going to throw me out of the hotel. It's too much for me. If I've got something to concentrate on, taking pictures, I'm fine. But I feel so sorry I couldn't be a fan in the stadium. I'd need to have a camera just because I'd get barred. I'd get thrown out of every stadium in the country.
Do you ever slam your laptop down straight after the final whistle after a defeat, or?
No, I just think get back to the office and have a beer. Just try and soften the blow.
Yeah, there's obviously been some incredibly iconic photographs over the years. I mean, one that sticks out in my mind is that training ground shot of the five from the Invincibles. It looks like a boy band front cover, doesn't it? How did that all come about? Talking of the Freddie, Sol Campbell, Pires, Bergkamp, and Omri one.
It's just a training picture, and really those are, people always say to me, "What's your favourite picture you've ever taken?" And you try and think of all those sort of big moments and stuff, the Silvermortal scores a winning goal and, all those sort of big moments. But for me, it's those ones that you take that you don't think have got any real meaning at the time, because it's a training session, that's it. But when you look back at them, you think, wow, look at those, look at them. It's nothing special at the time.
Yeah.
And it's so good because it's so surprising when you see a reaction from people on social media now, and when they look at it and say, "Wow, look at those players." But I didn't. I just saw them as footballers and people I was lucky enough to photograph. I didn't stage it. I didn't set it up. It was there. I'm just capturing what's there at that time.
Yeah, it's in photographic folklore, that one, isn't it? That snap.
Yeah, but I think that you make a good point, because also other moments such as cup finals, whether that be FA Cup, Champions League, it doesn't really matter. You also know the world's press is there. You got thousands of photographers there, whereas actually some of those candid moments on the training pitch, no one else is capturing that, and that sort of everyday moment, in a way, when you probably look back at it, is far more powerful in your portfolio, because no one else could have seen that. That was you capturing that at that moment, and I think that's what really resonates with fans as well, though.
It's that's not my skill as a photographer. That's just the position that I'm in. I'm lucky enough to have that position. There are some great pictures taken by some much better photographers than me at cup finals, and I think the challenge for myself and David Price, who we work together, is to try and equal or better that if we can, to compete with the other photographers. But the training ground stuff is quite loose. If you miss a goal in training, it doesn't mean anything. If you miss a goal in the cup final, then Arsenal doesn't have a picture of Aaron Ramsey's goal in the 2015 FA Cup final. So there's no pressure at training, but the pressure is really 2014. Yeah, the pressure really is the match days, really.
Yeah, we're talking about the Invincibles a minute ago. I mean, Tom's got a counter-attack challenge for you, Stuart. We're going to put you under a little bit of pressure with this.
Yeah, we thought, given, as you said, privileged position, Well, I think you're being very self-deprecating with the lack of skill. I'm not sure about that. But given your privileged position, I imagine you know some of these players very well. And what we sometimes like to do is ask our guests to give us 1 or 2 words which maybe describes your recollection of those players at that time. So we're going to run through the Invincible 11, if you don't mind, and just give us 1 or 2 words that capture sort of your thoughts on those individuals, thinking maybe from your sort of viewpoint behind the camera, as it were. So obviously in goal, Jens Lehmann.
Mad.
Ashley Cole.
Oh, lovely Ash. And, and he still loves Arsenal. And that's what Arsenal fans should realise.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about Ashley Cole today. I love Ashley Cole. I mean, never have I been more heartbroken when a player left, and I still haven't. But Sol Campbell.
Sol, Sol, interesting. Good to work with. Probably the most unbelievable signing that will never ever happen again. But I was so happy to be there on the day when he walked out of Arsene Wenger's office.
Richard Wright, isn't it?
When he walked, I was standing outside the office. When he walked out, I just started laughing, and he looked at me, never met me before, and said, "Who are you, and why are you laughing?" And I was like, "Sol Campbell signing for Arsenal." So, yeah, Sol was just unique. I think Sol. Colo, one of the most wonderful people I've ever met in my life. I taught him how to play pool in his house in Enfield.
Lovely.
Lauren, hard as nails. Just great guy. But you would not mess with him.
Yeah, you want him in the trenches, wouldn't you? Yeah,
absolutely, 100%.
Freddie.
Well, what can you say about Freddie? Trendiest man ever. Great to deal with. Never thought Freddie would go into coaching, but so glad he did, because a lot of players leave and you never see him again. So it was great to have Freddie back as a coach.
Walking around in his Calvins. Patrick Vieira.
Patrick, just a god. I think he dragged that Invincibles team after they'd won. After they won the league, I felt, from what people had told me, that he dragged the team through to being unbeaten with the way he behaved. If you messed about with him, he would nail you, whether you were a player or you were a member of staff.
Mm.
Yeah, we do debates for other days, but people always talk about the greatest Arsenal player of all time, and people talk about Bergkamp and Henry rightly. But I do still think that Patrick Vieira for that decade was our most important player. Gilberto Silva.
Gilberto, what do they call him? The invisible wall. Gilberto was a fantastic player, and I think he was out with a back injury. I think, was it the year after he was out with a back injury, and then I think
missed him badly.
I think people realised how good he was, because I don't think he got the credit of the fans that he should have got. And also just such a. I'll still keep in touch with him. Such a great guy as well.
Bobby Perez.
What can you say? Most beautiful man that lived, can't you? That's about it, isn't it? And also, do you know, I watched a bit of Invincible stuff today. He was right place at the right time. Every time the ball ricocheted in the box, Robert was there, wasn't he? Just sort of, cool as a cucumber, wasn't he? Apart from that penalty with Thierry.
Yeah, could talk for hours about Bobby.
Faultless.
Dennis, what can you say?
Dennis, well, what do you say? God, best player that ever played for Arsenal. Sorry, but for me, probably changed the football club. But also probably the only player that and he knows it as well, that I'm still nervous around if I ever see him. There's no other player that I'm nervous around apart from him, and he knows it. When we did his statue, and he came back for it, he was laughing at me because he knew how nervous I was. It was my picture the statue was based on, and he knew how he could just see what I was like, and he was just taking the mickey out of me. He's hugged me once. I remember all the years I've worked with him, and I always wanted to sort of hug Dennis because I loved him so much. And then that last, was it a Dennis Bergkamp game at Highbury I think against West Brom,
West Brom, yeah. And he scored the curler, didn't he?
Yeah, and then he came off the pitch and he hugged me. I thought, I've made it. Dennis likes me.
And you've not washed since. To round us off, Thierry Henry.
Well, Thierry's just like incredible, just the most incredible, powerful footballer and unplayable at his time. I can't believe he didn't win Ballon d'Or.
No.
at that time. You know, he was just amazing. And what was great about Thierry, he still absolutely loves the club. And when he was away in America, he would phone me on a regular basis to talk about the team and stuff like that. And it was such a shock. You know, I'm just, you know, sitting in a pub with my girlfriend, and my phone rings. Hi, Stuart, it's TT. And then we have a half an hour chat about Arsenal, and she'd be sitting there. My God, just get off the phone. It's only Thierry Henry. But, you know, second best player who ever played for Arsenal.
Ooh.
It's a great debate. That's a great debate.
He's gone for it, Tom. He's gone for it.
It's a great debate. It's a great debate. But I always think, and one thing Andrew and I always talk about is there's lots of debates around best and greatest, and for me they can be two different things. And I definitely have the debate all day about the greatest player for Arsenal being Dennis Bergkamp, because I'd agree with you in the way he changed the club. And you know that you just the step into I know it wasn't quite the 21st century, clearly coming in 1995, but getting a European player of that stature and that quality. But for me, Thierry Henry is still the best for the reason that you said, that when he was at his very best, he was unplayable. When he was the best player in the world, I'm not sure, certainly in my lifetime, we've ever had, apart from Thierry Henry, the genuine best player in the world. Because I think when Dennis was at his best in like 97, 98, you know, Zinedine Zidane was around. When Henry was at his best in 2003, 2004, 2005, he was the best player in the world. But you know, that is a debate for another day. So I won't.
Maybe next year we'll get Stuart back on. I'll be the referee for that one.
or Stuart, obviously now you're such friends with HTO Pod, you'll just get Thierry and Dennis on the pod, and they can just talk about it themselves. We did want to ask about how it's evolved, and we made jokes around it, around our lack of ability to take photos with iPhones or Android. There's other phones out there for people, but everyone can be a photographer now, can't they? And actually, do you think how have you seen that as a profession therefore evolve now? That do you embrace that, or actually do you just see that, well, actually every Tom, Dick and Harry can just take a photo and put it on Instagram now?
No, when I first wanted to be a photographer, I had a careers meeting at school, and they brought in a local like portrait photographer who just laughed at me in front of my parents and said, "Photography's dead." And this was 35 years ago. And really, there was a point where photography was sort of dying a little bit, but the sort of social media coming around, and Instagram and Twitter and that, is actually probably resurrected a lot of people's careers. And I love the fact that people use Instagram and everyone thinks they're a photographer, because it shows that people are actually looking and trying to take pictures. I don't, you know, and honestly, I use my iPhone quite a bit to take pictures, and I think it's actually made people appreciate a photograph now, whereas maybe 15 years ago, the only people who took pictures are people who had, you know, mini cameras, or they're professional photographers. Yeah,
then videos exploded, didn't they, sort of thing. Whereas it's sort of, I just feel like with photos as well, wanted to ask you this, Stuart, is that it's such an emotive end product. It just evokes so much nostalgia. You know, there must be sort of a real privilege in what you do. Do you feel proud, the pride you feel when people respond so positively to your photos online?
Yeah, I'm quite good at what I do, but I'm not stupid enough to think that I've got a lot of social media followers. I wouldn't have them on the strength of my pictures if I didn't work for Arsenal. So Arsenal has made me what I am. I'm so lucky, going back to the early days, that Arsene Wenger allowed me so much access at the training grounds. And I'm very proud to look at some of the pictures I've taken. As you said, the one with the 5 players earlier. But to have that access is not every club photographer gets that. And I think what I'm good at is my relationships with people. My relationship with Arsene and the trust that he gave me opportunity to be in areas where other people wouldn't be allowed. Other club photographers can't do that. So I'd say my probably best ability was to get on with people. My second one was to take a picture. And it's about being allowed into those, into those sort of private areas and
Yeah.
stuff like that, where you can capture that stuff. You don't have to be a technically brilliant photographer. I think you just have to be there. And as time goes on, if you look back at pictures from 50, 60, 70 years ago, technically they might not be the best pictures, but they are the moments in time. And that's what I try to cover.
Yeah, is there ever? I wonder, has there ever been a morning at London Coney where you've rocked up and it's been like a day after a really bad, heavy defeat or a critical moment in the season, and you've got the camera out and you're thinking, "Oh, this could be a bit tricky today."
Yeah, I've done. Yeah, but do you know what's good now? Because I've been around for a long time. That when I started, I was new kid on the block, but now it's like, oh, it's that geezer who's been here for 30 years. So I'm generally treated with a lot of respect, which most people are at the training ground anyway. But I think I know when to point the camera and when not to. So, and I don't have to get reminded about that. We did a squad photo in the partners' suits the day after we got knocked out of the Champions League. And that was tricky. I was just walking out to the picture with Arsene Wenger, and I thought, my God, this is going to be tricky. But he was so good, and the guys are professional. They know the score. They know what I'm there for. I'm not going to stitch them up. Everything I do, lots of stuff for the players, and such. That's positive. I'd never post a picture of a fight in training or anything like that. I mean, they know how much I love the club and how much I look after their interests.
So what's it like shooting the modern day Arsenal? Well, obviously, Mikel Arteta's been there for just coming up to a year now. He talks a lot about energy in his press conferences. What's the vibe around the place as a photographer?
Look, I mean, obviously we had a bit of a hiccup against Leicester, but if you look at it, you think, well, should have been a goal up, could have been 2 or 3 up. I'm very positive about Mikel. He's a great guy. See, I knew him when he was a player, and he was destined to be a fantastic manager. It's early days, but it's a little bit different. But for me to photograph and to watch the training sessions, I'm literally, I've been a football fan all my life, but when I watch the sort of detail that he puts in, it blows me away. And so much of it is sort of common sense, and I think, my God, I never thought about that.
It's interesting. You mentioned earlier about Freddie. Sort of, you didn't see that kind of leadership in him, and whereas Mikel, it was obviously there from day one you met him, right?
Yeah, I think Freddie, because Freddie at the time, I think we all remember he was a player, don't we? And I think if you speak to any of his teammates, not one of them would think he'd ever be a coach. That was just Freddie's personality. He did all this fashion stuff, but I think the moment Mikel came in, I remember we were away on pre-season tour in Malaysia, I think it was, and Steve Bold said to me, he will be a fantastic manager one day. And I was like, what do you, he said, look, he's attention to detail. He's interested in absolutely everything. And you look at Mikel now, I mean, he's a great guy, but he's so, he looks at absolutely everything. The attention to detail is incredible with him. And I just think it's great to have someone like that. And also for me as well, he knows me. So, he might cut me a bit of slack if I make a mistake or whatever, but he accepts me. It's not like when Unai came in, I had to introduce myself to him and sort of get his confidence and with his staff. But with Mikel, straight away on the first day, he walked in on his first day, gave me a massive hug. Great to be back, so it was, it's an easy transition for me.
Yeah. Seamless. So,
and with that, your hug from Dennis was forgotten. You see,
Not really. No. My hug from Dennis is
Mikel's got a way to go to get a hug of that level of impact.
What's next for you, Stuart? What are the plans?
What, for this week or for
tonight?
Wherever.
Go
home and bath a baby.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
How long do you see yourself
ahead,
doing
really?
this? Is this you for as many years as they'll have you?
Look, this is my club. I love this club. I always have, and I hate that sort of term dream job, but I've done my stint working for an agency, traveling around the world, covering different sports. This is what I love. I love football. I love Arsenal. I live in the community. I love the community. So I'd like to think I'd be here for for a while. You know, I still want to photograph a perfect football match. Every time I finish a game, I look at my pictures and I'll think, well, I should have got this, should have got that. So, you know, until I could, you know, if one day I have a game that I get everything and everything's perfect, I might think about retiring, but I don't think that will ever happen.
Be nice to photograph another European Cup final for Arsenal as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and you know, I would love to, you know, the Invincibles and winning the league. I would love to do that again, because at the time it just seemed as though it was a natural thing, season by season. But now, you know, I'd love that for the staff. I'd love that for the players, just to be able to record that as well with all our modern equipment and cameras and the quality that we got. That would be my sort of ambition. If win the Premier League again would be probably the main thing.
Yeah, to see it happen again. I think that for me is you're right. We almost got used to it for that period of success. Not winning the league, I mean, because we only won it 3 times in that period, but you know, that sustained, challenging success. And yeah, now it's been such a long time. I think it would be so special for everyone in the club. Yeah, absolutely.
3 times more than Spurs.
Absolutely.
We'll end it there. Perfect. No, Stuart, that's been fantastic.
Yeah, an absolute pleasure. And you mentioned one thing I just wanted to reflect on during the call, about saying that, you know, you wanted to take photos that will be last, you know, long after you've gone, and you really do. And I think for lots of Arsenal fans and football fans around, they're very special photos, and then they bring us, just for us mere fans, a lot closer to the club. So really do appreciate it. Thank you.
That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Take care, Stuart.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.